Welcome back, guys. This is my wife's fully street legal 2002 XR100R. This thing is awesome. It'll do about 50 miles an hour, so it's definitely not a highway bike, but it's fully street legal and it is great around town. We are going to put a new top end in it today, and the reason for that is this motor has never been apart. Occasionally, not all the time, it'll blow out a lot of smoke out the exhaust, and I think that that is a sign of bad valve seals. While we're in there, we might as well put a new piston in it and new piston rings. I'll show you this bike real close because it pretty much has the best of the best on it. It's a super clean install. I'm really proud how this came out, and I have a full playlist on how I built this and all the parts that you need to do and buy to do this, and it wasn't overly expensive. For parts, I've got everything all from Honda. This is all OEM stuff I'm replacing it with, so we shouldn't have any problems with fit-ups. There's valve seals, clips. There's the pin for the rod. These are the piston rings right here. But let me show you this install, guys, because I'm super impressed with it. I get a lot of questions and I get a lot of looks. People look at this because it looks like it was factory installed. And what I did is I started out with a full Tusk street legal kit, which includes all the controls. So that's how this ended up the way it looks right here. That includes this is the on-off switch, the main switch, the blinkers, headlights, horn. Then I have a Koso dash. I'll have a link to all this stuff. If you want to check it out, it'll be in that playlist, not here. And I'll have links to that playlist down below. I built this little bracket, just a piece of flat bar, and put it together using some stainless hardware. This is the headlight. You can see super clean how just simple and slick this looks. Turn signals are integrated into the hand guards. So again, nice clean look up front. Now if you look at the brackets, I used integrated brake and clutch perches. Again, I have all of this stuff in my links. So that makes this whole install look super clean. You can see here is the front brake switch, and then the mirror just threads into that. It looks like it came from the factory like this. Before we start, let's take a compression reading and see what the compression is. It's probably pretty low. We'll pop the spark plug out of it. We'll take a reading, see what it is overall, and then see what it is after we're all done. Yeah, loud. See how I was running too. I think it's running pretty good. Might be a little fouled, I don't know. Definitely running good. Not running lean, which is good because, you know, we string this out on the some of the back roads, you know, 50 miles an hour. That's good. I'll just kick it over by hand, holding the throttle wide open. About 70 psi. So we should have around 160. So we are about 90 psi low. And like I said, this starts on first or second kick. So this carburetor is obviously dialed in really well. We'll probably have to do some adjusting on it after we get it with a little bit more compression. But we are definitely low on compression, so it does need to be rebuilt, and the valves are perfect on it. I've adjusted the valves when I built it, so it was they're right on. So took off the seat and the gas tank. Now we're just going to loosen up the carburetor and get the exhaust loosened up. Yeah, when I picked up this bike, guys, I paid $400 for it. It needed quite a bit of work, but if you guys enjoy like rebuild videos, you guys will probably like this one. It's a really popular video. Now you can see a little bit better now. The battery box, I made it out of aluminum. And then the battery just slips down in there. And then these are all the connections. They're up high on top of the air box. Everything's all fused, as you can see. And everything has been soldered and heat shrink. And most of these bolts I've replaced with stainless steel button head bolts, just to make it look better and so that I don't have to worry about rust. Great thing about these bikes, guys, is they are simple to work on. No coolant lines, no computers, no nothing. They just run, and they're reliable. Super clean in there. Look at that. As I'm wiping down this hardware for the valve cover, I can almost like smell the blow-by on the hardware. Almost smells like burnt oil. I'm guessing that piston is probably pretty worn. Hopefully the cylinder's okay. Again, these things are pretty cheap to work on. Now we can loosen up our cam chain, and then we can start taking out our cams and get the whole top end apart. It's been a minute since I've done this, but if I remember correctly, I think this is the coarse adjustment for the cam chain, and then this is the fine tuning adjuster for the cam chain up here, I think. Ooh, those bolts feel crunchy. Crunchy. Hopefully they don't break. Maybe that's just how they sound, I don't know. So this will be my first time rebuilding a dirt bike motor or top end. I've done lots and lots of Chevrolet small block 350 motors. I've built quite a few of those back in the day, but never a dirt bike motor, so this would be kind of fun. But the principles are all the same. I mean, internal combustion motor, it's basically all the same. And I think I have a shop manual for this bike, so I'll have to refer to it when we put it all back together to get all our torque specs. I'm a huge believer in torquing everything, especially when you're working on a motorcycle or an engine for that matter. There we go. Man, I don't know why that was on there so tight, but probably never been off, that's why. Now I got to loosen up the cam chain so I can get the cam out. I probably should have done this first, but so you can loosen up this, which is, like I said, the big adjuster, and then if you go clockwise on the small adjuster, that will make that the smallest. And to save myself a bunch of aggravation, I put the cam bridge back on it so that I can just not be struggling with it, and we can loosen these up. Now, if we pull the cam gear out a little bit towards us, it'll drop down some, allowing us to get the cam gear off. And then for now, we'll just wrap this through, and we can just tie this up anywhere. And just put a little loop up around the frame or the handlebars or whatever, just to get it out of the way so it doesn't drop down inside the motor. Now back to where we were, and you can see on the cam bridge, I actually put R on it, just so I would know that that's the right side when I look on it. Now we can pull the cam out. See how this cam looks? Looks like it's in great shape. There's no galling, no scoring. Looks great. To give me some additional clearance, I'm going to remove this intake boot. This will just give us a little bit of a room here, you know. I don't know if this will come out or not, but I'm going to try. There we go. There. I don't know if we're going to be able to get the head off with the motor in the bike. That would be discouraging if we can't, but... So now this bolt here is a 10 millimeter, and hopefully that'll come out. So I don't break it. I might hit it with a hammer to shock it a little. Yeah, came out. Sometimes if you take a bolt and whack the head of it like that a little bit, it'll put a little bit of a shock into the bolt and keep it from breaking off if it's something that might be seized in, you know. Yeah, so I don't think the head is going to come off unless we can get the studs out of the motor. I might have to look into this. Maybe we can pull the studs out. Getting the studs out might be more problem than leaving them, but we'll see. I don't know. I didn't really want to have to take the motor out to do a top end on this, but we'll see. Typical for me, guys. It always ends up turning out to be something so much more than it really has to be. So as you can see, I've pulled the motor out because I couldn't get the head off in that space, and I didn't want to take a chance of trying to pull the studs out and then having one of the studs break off. So I figured it'd just be easier to get the motor out of it and do it that way. So that's what we're going to do. I pulled out this adjuster, the fine adjuster, just grabbed it with a pair of pliers and just pulled that out. And now we should be able to pull the head off, I'm hoping. And as you can see, I've got the cam chain tied up over here just so we don't lose it down inside the motor. There we go. You can see there's a bunch of oil in the head, so we'll flip it over on a cookie sheet and we can check the valves out. Well, the valves were burned. Definitely got some carbon in there though. See that? We'll fill it up with some WD-40 and see if it leaks by. Just curious how these will clean up. I've got a brass bristle brush and I'm gonna swab these around. We'll probably lap these valves in too. Actually weren't that bad, really. Considering this motor's never been apart. Alright, let's pull the head off now. Probably have to use a rubber hammer to get it. There we go. Yeah, it just broke free. Alright. Get this guide out of here. There we go. That rod's in really good shape too. There's no up and down movement, none. And just the slightest side by side, nothing up and down. So that is perfect. There's a little ridge right down here, and my guess is it probably stuck a ring at one time while it was sitting. But it's not a Nicosil cylinder. It's just a regular cast cylinder, because if it was Nicosil, you wouldn't be able to stick a magnet to it. So just for the heck of it, guys, I was just looking at all the rings, making sure that all the rings are moving around. None of them are seized in here. So everything's moving around nice and freely the way it should. But just out of curiosity, I'm going to pull the top ring off and stuff it in the bore and just get an idea of what the ring gap is on this compared to the top ring on our new piston rings. These look pretty worn. 16 just barely fits tight in there. So it's a tight 16 thousandths right there, but if I pull it up to right here where this little ridge is, that goes up to 20 thousandths of a gap. So that could be the problem. We may end up having to get a cylinder for this. Let me see if there's any room for me to hone the cylinder by just checking a couple of the rings, the new rings. So I just stuck the new ring into the bore, and I don't know if you can see it, but right there is the gap, and that gap is 7 thousandths. So, and I think the specs call for 4 thousandths. So I'll have to see what the tolerance is. I'll have to reference my manual, but I'm kind of leaning towards getting another cylinder just because of this little ridge right here, because the piston goes all the way to the top of this surface. I think if we're going to do it and invest the time in it, we might as well do it right and make sure that that ridge isn't in there. There we go. There we go, and I didn't even lose it. Now we just got to push the wrist pin out. We're gonna get a new wrist pin too for it. Come on. That wrist pin looks fine, no problem, no sign of heat or any damage done to it. So while we're waiting for the rest of the parts to arrive, like the cylinder head, let's get working on replacing the valve seals on this head. Now I've already pulled off the exhaust valve. It looks pretty carboned up too. You see the carbon all around that. We'll clean those up real good. Then after this, we'll pull the other one out together. nice and straight. See that? Watch. Then to get the locks out, I just use a magnet and just reach in there, pulls them right out. So we'll pull out the double springs, then the valve. And that's the valve seal right there. Yep, valves look good, just a little carboned up, that's all. You see how much carbon's on them. We'll clean that right up though. Right now what I'm going to do is I've got a Dremel with a brass bristle brush on it, and I'm just going to carefully work my way around here and just clean off any carbon that's down inside these ports. There, that looks pretty nice. Now let's clean up these valves a little bit. Alright, I washed the cylinder up, cleaned it up, and now we're going to put it back together, get the new valve seals in it, and get the valves back in it. These are all genuine Honda, so shouldn't be any problems with fit up. Put a little bit of engine oil on the parts. Might as well put the intake valve in. Put a little bit of light coating on the stem, so when it goes through the valve seal it'll be good. Do the same thing for the exhaust. Put a little bit of oil on the stem. Now with our valve seals in, now we can put our valve springs back together. This episode is getting a little long, so I think we're going to end it here, guys. And when we come back next week, we'll have the cylinder, and we'll get this thing all back together. We'll get it fired up. We'll do another compression test to see how much we increased it. So guys, if you enjoy this content, I would appreciate it if you like and share this stuff, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys next week, and we will get this thing up and running.